Hello everybody. So this is yet another video that I wanted to make today. I've been making more and more One Piece theories because I think it's kind of pretty interesting. I know that a lot of people, they don't like theories for this, that, and another, or for some reason there's this superiority thing on the internet where, everyone has to disprove everything. And look, whenever I read or see a theory, just by Oro Jackson, or whether it be Roger Base, or whether it be by Gear 5 makes a lot of ones that make a lot of sense. I don't really necessarily discount them. I mean, recently I saw one somewhere that with Momonosuke as an egg. That didn't make any sense. That was trash. But for the most part, whenever I see a theory, I honestly and truthfully like where it's going, and whether it becomes true or not, it doesn't really matter. So just getting that out there, that's what I hope is people are just respectful of. It's because it's my opinion, it ain't yours. Now today I'd like to do a hypothetical, and specifically a hypothetical if Luffy, Ace, and Sabo were Marines, because there's been an image that's been surfaced somewhere online where Garb's chasing him with two swords, where maybe I'll try to incorporate that with the video, but anyways, they're being chased by Garb, and I think you could make it work. From the very beginning, you'd have to make it different. So if it was a what if Luffy wanted to be, instead of Pirate King, I think something where you could still have it is he wants to be like Fleet Admiral, and why that would make sense. Wants to be Fleet Admiral, and he wants to end the age of piracy. But he would be kind of a character that would be a gray character still as a Marine, because he'd be like, it would be kind of cool if he incorporated the Garp thing. Like if people just kept saying, "Oh yeah, you're the son of Garp," Garp the Fist, and it's like I don't really, I don't care about being known as the grandson of Garp the Fist. I want to be my own person. I don't want to be a hero. And at the same time, he just wants to take down pirates individually, for whatever reason. And in that case, then I think it would make more sense, especially considering that dialogue where Garb said he wanted to be a vice admiral. That the furthest we see Luffy go is if he wants to be fleet admiral, maybe he'll just be vice admiral for a while. That could make sense. So through the first part of the series and through East Blue, I think you could still incorporate it the same way. I think we don't see the two older brothers for most of the series because they're already promoted to, like, Ace is like an admiral, or like they're both vice admirals in the start of the series. Now Luffy, on the other hand, he would start out in East Blue, same way, maybe same way as Kobe, that kind of situation. And Zoro's an interesting character. He would still very much factor into all these equations, but instead, he could just be a top tier bounty hunter, which the series is lacking. Either that, or eventually, because we saw freaking Buggy become a Shishibukai, I definitely think Zoro, without a doubt, could easily have become a Shishibukai if he just wanted to, If he could be able to be the greatest swordsman in the process, I don't think he would really care either way if he didn't have Luffy there, or the crew. And I think the same way he'd be going, if he said he was going from the Grand Line onward, and he didn't, he doesn't pay attention to the Marine orders, but at the same time, he's taking out so many pirates they just don't care, could be an interesting way to go. And I think from East Blue, people like Nami would actually, he could get them to join the Marines or something. And that would be an interesting contrast, because her mom, or surrogate mom, was a Marine, so it would be like the people, I think it was Izo, would definitely not like for her to become a Marine, because they already knew about Belle-Marie. So I think that could be definitely a thing that could have been, something. Right along as we go in this directional line, he still could have taken out Arlong. If he found out the Marine things, could have been like, he's just he's a selfish person, Luffy is, to be honest. The reason why he's a hero is because he takes out a lot of people, and he's a good guy. So if he still has those same traits, I definitely think that he would have taken Arlong out. If you listen to him, and some of his soldiers said, "Hey, we can't just do this," and he's like, "Nah, this guy's paying off the Marines. I'm I'm not gonna have, and it boom just takes Arlong out, and then his grandfather's like, that's my grandson or whatever, and then we see him progressively. Maybe he gets put up to, the one above, like petty officer, major, or whatever. And then we get to see him go on, to the Grand Line, and we see him meet Smoker and stuff. And in that instance, well, the Usopp thing, well, Usopp wouldn't have necessarily died, because if he's going in that same directional line, he would have eventually ran into Usopp too, and he would have said, look, don't be a pirate, don't be this, blah blah blah, but I'm not gonna arrest you because you're not even a pirate yet. So this is where it's interesting, because Usopp could potentially go on his own pirate journey with the Going Merry and maybe those other kids, or something else, somebody else that he could invite, and he could go out on his own pirate journey. That could be pretty interesting. Maybe he wouldn't be such a coward, because it took me a long time to like him, so that could be something too. As for Bartier, instead of having iron full body, well, you could just replace that with Luffy. He runs into maybe not Usopp, because that wouldn't, we just saw him, so maybe not. We could see a cover story in the process of Usopp, but he could just run into Bartier and like this Don Krieg pirate or whatever, and then he runs into Zoro again, because we didn't see him for a while, and we ran into him again, and he's like, you're still bounty hunter, blah blah blah, and Luffy's like, I don't really care, whether you're a pirate or not. If you're not harming people, I'm not gonna really give a crap, even though I should. As a Marine, I'm not gonna care. So I think that'd be pretty funny, and then so they kind of all meet up, and Nami's part of his. So it's kind of like Nami and Luffy would be kind of like a Smoker to Sheik, that kind of or Nina, or that kind of relationship that they would have. So it's like, yeah, they're like going for the same goal, and like she wants to map the world. So it's like all these things are the same. Maybe their cook runs out, so they ran out of food, that kind of instance, and then they have to get Sanji, and it's like, well, I don't really want to join the Marines, and at the same time, like, I was like, well, if you want to explore the Grand Line, and you might want it to be the Marines, like, and maybe Zeph says, like, look, I was a pirate, and look, it didn't work always out for me in a good way, maybe this could be something, maybe you could be different in that regard. I'm just saying, for hypothetical, that could be something that could make a lot of sense. And when Luffy finally gets to, like, major players like, Crocodile, no shit, he would want to take them out. So, I don't think Usopp and Zoro would be part of the crew at this point. The Vivi thing, he would most certainly, nothing would be different. Nothing would be different other than the fact that he'd have Smoker helping, but maybe Smoker's just like, it's match up well against Crocodile, because we never really saw them fight, or maybe he just said, whatever. And it'd be funny if Usopp, was there in this arc, but, he was kind of, he doesn't know what's going on, so he ends up showing, or maybe he shows up in a little garden and still meets them the same way, and so we see Luffy kind of interacting with Usopp again, and then, he leaves on his journey again, but this time he actually has a couple of other people. Maybe even Mr. 3 instead of just getting one shot, because we know he joins Buggy anyways. Maybe he joins Usopp. That could be something interesting. So then we go all the way, the rest of the Grand Line. He would definitely take out Crocodile. And to say that he wouldn't be as strong as a Marine, I mean, that might be a little bit true, but at the same time, if he was trying to be Fleet Admiral, if he was trying to in this scenario, then he definitely would still be pretty strong. I don't think that he would just let things get the way they are in the world. He wouldn't just let, Shishibukai do whatever he wants. He would definitely try to stop Crocodile, because at the end of the day, if the government knew, like, Smoker would have been awarded those medals anyway, so that's what I'm saying. I'm not going to get too much into it, but he still would save certain things. So then after that, you finally have, like, places like Enies Lobby. Enies Lobby wouldn't happen. I don't know what would happen with Nico Robin in that situation. Maybe he would just have her on his crew, because Garp's soldiers didn't tell anybody about the fact that Luffy's dad was Dragon, so maybe that's the same way. They don't, they're like, well, we respect you, Captain, so we don't really care. And so that'd be kind of cool if, like, he, like, told Nico Robin, like, it's probably a good thing for you to stay with, with us or go somewhere else. And maybe that's when she meets up with, Usopp or something. Meanwhile, Zoro's mowing people down. He still gets beat by Mihawk, but Johnny and I can't remember his other name. Maybe those two guys would actually join Zoro, and they would actually get pretty strong throughout the series as they're building up. Maybe even runs into Usopp, and they become pals, but they don't like travel together because they're trying to do their own, have their own goals maybe, and they just don't see eye to eye like they often don't do. Then from here we see Luffy. Well, we'd probably just skip Water 7 and all that. Well, first there's Skypiea, and Skypiea wouldn't happen, which is unfortunate. It's unfortunate, but at the same time, if we didn't know about it, but Sky Island probably would be destroyed now, and Nell would still probably end up fighting Luffy, because after he destroyed that, he's heading down to the blue, the blue sea or whatever. So he would still fight Enel, and he would beat the hell out of Enel regardless. And I think Enel could have destroyed all those islands. I just don't know if he could have destroyed them like completely, because you can never just destroy everything. That's a little bit too much. Like, all of Marineford didn't get destroyed during the war, Paramount War. So I think after that, we would see. In Thriller Bark, I don't see Moria. He could definitely fit in the equation for sure. Because if Moria, if Luffy's a significant guy, do you really think Moria is going to care? If Smoker ended up on his island, or any Marine like that would end up, do you really think he wouldn't really care? As a Shichibukai, he would definitely not give two fucks about doing that stuff. And if Luffy didn't like pirates at all, or didn't trust them, or saw Shanks as a rival, he would still respect him, but saw him as a rival. I forgot to mention that, but I definitely think Shanks would still be somebody important in his life, kind of like Kobe with Luffy. So I think from there on, we would see, and Kobe, of course, would be part of his naval crew, so that's something I forgot to mention. Helipo, those kind of guys. They'd eventually go from Garp's, thing, or they would, Garp would send them over, and whenever he needed them, kind of thing, or something like that, because you would be lacking people, considering there's only Nami, maybe Robin, but I don't think Robin. So there'd only be Nami, and so Kobe would make more sense with Helipo. From there on, we would see him become more of a captain character, like Tashigi is in Punk Hazard. By that point in Punk Hazard, I could definitely see him still. Luffy doesn't give two craps. I could still see him punching a Celestial Dragon. He doesn't have any bias. He always is protected. He doesn't care about the different races. So I could for sure see him actually taking on, the Tenryubito, St. Carlos. I could just see him punching him anyways, because he doesn't care. It's his personality. It's not necessarily that he's a pirate. You can't take out someone's personality. You could just change their job description, but you can't do that. And Luffy would not care. He would get demoted, maybe suspended, and at that point, things would really start getting interesting. Because, the events of Marineford wouldn't happen. Oh, you're wrong. Respectfully, I don't think that's the case. Gold, at this point, it would be interesting if Ace still was the same, but this time, in his promotion, as he was getting evaluated for becoming an admiral, because, I don't know, maybe there was a seat open or whatever. In this scenario, there's a seat open. I'm just going to say that. I don't need to go into details on every little thing, because I can't fathom that. But in the process of that, they find out that he's Goldie Ronder's son, and he's like, "Whoa, look, I'm not a pirate. I'm not, you saw me in the Marines, right? He's still got that same carefree attitude, like, you know what, this, all these other things, that you did in other countries, you helped your brother, and he still would have met Luffy in Alabasta. I forgot to mention that. He still would have met him in Alabasta, and the two of them, Ace would have taken down, like, Mr. One and that kind of stuff. So that would have happened. And so Marineford, the event still would have played out the same way, because as they're evaluating Ace to be an admiral, they're like, well, wait a minute, what just happened here? You literally, we can't have you be an admiral, because you know what? You're Goldie Roger's son. It's unacceptable. And instead of just throwing him in the brig, they would just say, you know what? We're not going to suspend you. We're gonna leave you in Impel Down. So instead of it being a big major war, it would be something crazier, because we already saw people like Shuri who'd be put in the head jailer. He got put in Impel Down just for killing people, which is like, I understand that, but if they're prisoners and they're doing something they shouldn't be, then you know what I mean. Like, you would think that the Marines wouldn't want to waste a weapon, and so I don't think they would want to waste Ace, but they'd want to put him in a jail cell and be like, we're not going to kill you because the public already knows that you're a main player, that you helped in Alabasta. You're going to be just put in a cell and like sit in whatever level 6. So Luffy's got to do the same thing, but instead of Marineford and Impel Down being separate, they're going to be one arc. Oh yeah, and Boa's arc wouldn't happen either. But at the same time, it'd be kind of funny if Luffy still kind of ran into Boa and they kind of had a little thing after this. But anyways, Impel Down happens and all like chaos happens as like they literally are just going through the levels, and Luffy's like, he's a Marine, so he's able to do it, but he's like, yo, you're suspended, you shouldn't be down here. Luffy starts just going ham. He starts like just taking everything down. Everything comes here. Shanks shows up still because I think the reason he stopped Marineford is because he was Goldie Roger's son was being executed kind of thing. So the Kaido thing and him would still be running into it. They'd still be running into each other there. Everything else would still be running the same way, I think. Except all the events, all the battle would happen in Impel Down, which would be crazy because it's such a tight, closed-in area. And the Marines are like, they're scrambling. They're like, what do we do? What do we do? Because, and Luffy's like, he makes this big speech, kind of towards, when they capture him and say, look, I'm not a turncoat. All I'm doing is you shouldn't kill my brother just because he's related to Goldie Roger. At the same time, he says, screw this, and just busts through, And he still would want to be the fleet admiral, but he would want to do it in a way that makes sense for him. He can't just have his brother get killed, because they would eventually execute him regardless, because even if he became a Marine, which is kind of ironic that Garp wanted them to be Marines. Anyways, Sabo in the situation, he's the same kind of thing, except, he's kind of entailing the revolutionaries or whatever, and so, and that gets a little murky because he'd be a noble, so I don't know how he fits into the equation as much, but he definitely fits in more, and I still think Ace would end up getting killed by Aki, by his own people, because we saw Aki, he was totally fine with killing his own Marines, so that would still happen in the same way. And in doing so, you'd have a different series. If this was a manga series, it'd be interesting because Luffy would say, alright, I'm done. I am done with the Marines. Garp would retire, so he's like, you know what, I don't care. You killed my brother. He's already been demoted, he's already been suspended. He says, screw it. I'm just not going to do it. He's going to be like Kuzan. It's like, I still want justice, but in a different way. So I think from then on, Punk Hazard would be skipped, for sure. After that, Fishman Island would probably happen, most likely the same, especially if Jinbei still kind of, gave him that message and kind of helped him like he did in Marineford, except in Impel Down, heavily. I think that would definitely, he wouldn't have as tight of a relationship with Jinbei. He wouldn't be joining the crew, but then, you meet people like Zoro and Usopp. They both, are trying to get to this place. It'd be kind of interesting if instead of Mihawk training Luffy, Rayleigh trained, Zoro would be trained by Rayleigh, and he'd get really powerful in his fight to Mihawk. So this would still happen. These events are just pushing themselves. Nico Robin definitely at this point has been a crewmate of Usopp or something, and they all run into each other, and Luffy's like, this and that, like, I'm doing my own thing at this point, and I'm glad, hopefully you guys can be my allies, and all that, and so the events of Fishman Island still play out the same. He still takes out Hody, because he's like, yo, what are you doing? You can't be hurting, this princess, I still have my own principles in my justice system. I don't like, you just damaging a place like this. So he still takes him out in the same way. He still gets strong because in this scenario, instead of him just retiring altogether, Garp's like, even though you're not a Marine, I'm still going to train you as my grandson. So instead of Garp, the way he was kind of training him as kids, he full-on trains him, full-on. So he understands hockey, he understands all these things. He still can use, I wouldn't know if he would be able to use gear form, but he would have a stronger hockey base anyways, so he'd be a base, more powerful character. because you'd be trained by one of the strongest hockey users. And at this point, I think, without, Mori would still be a Shishibukai. There'd be a lot less stuff like that. Akino would, with this whole thing being filmed, I don't know if he'd still be a fleet admiral. I don't know how that would work in that scenario. But then we'd go from there, and then Dressrosa, which I've just gotten to. Like I said, Punk Hazard, I think we'd skip Punk Hazard still. But at the same time, if he doesn't, and he shows up kind of the same way as Kuzan with, Doflamingo, and says, you're not going to hurt my friend Smokey, you call him, he'd end up having to fight him on Dressrosa and say, runs into Fujitora, and Fujitoria's like, what are you doing here? You used to be a Marine, blah, 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 and everything all chaotic, and then Sabo's there, and he's like, look, this guy, he might be my, he's working under Fujitora as a vice admiral. He's like, look, you can't just do this. This guy is like, well, I guess he would be an admiral in that situation instead of Green Bull. And so, Admiral Sabo would kind of like let Luffy go in that situation. He'd be like, he's my brother. What are you going to do? And Fujitora, as respectful, says, all right, I'm going to bet that he's going to try it. And so at this point, with a stronger hockey base, it would be a more intense, harder fight with Doflamingo, but he'd still beat him. It would just take a lot longer and a lot more. Law, as a character, he would still be there, but, maybe even as Shishibukai, but, since he knows what happened, Punk Hazard, he'd have to do everything by himself, which would be crazy. Or maybe yet again, Zoro shows up because he's lost, and him and Johnny and the three of them show up at Punk Hazard and they cause shit. So Zoro has to go all out in these fights. He always has to go all out in this scenario. So Zoro goes all out, and in this results Punk Hazard being destroyed, and so Law and Zoro have an alliance instead, and Zoro's like, alright. So they go out to Dressrosa. All the events play out similarly, except we don't have the Coliseum, which is actually fine, because, well, I guess some of the Coliseum could still play out the same way, because in this scenario Ace died, so Luffy would still try to take the Marimar no Mi. I don't know who would exactly eat it. I guess Sabo could have ate it, if he was an admiral and refused to Devil Fruit before, which would be pretty cool, I think. And at this point, everything happens the same way, like I said, except Doflamingo doesn't get smashed down with Gear 4. Instead, it's like Luffy just beats the living crap out of him with, like, Garb Fist style kind of thing. So I think that would play out very well. That's as far as I've gotten. I haven't got anywhere farther. As far as I've read is chapter 791. Yeah, 791. So that's as far as I can say. But honestly, I think it's a very interesting idea to have Luffy, Sabo, and Ace as Marines. If this is all completely what if, it's just for fun. I just think that's what would end up happening. I think a lot of events would play out similarly, but some other things wouldn't. So I think it's important to remember some of this stuff. Yeah, so like this if you did. If you didn't, what else to tell you? So see you till next time.